Roswell is often treated like a myth, a strange story from the desert, a legend that grew too large over time. But when you look closer, Roswell is not just a story about a crash. It is a story about witnesses, secrecy, missing records, and official explanations that changed whenever the earlier version became too weak. In July 1947, rancher Mac Brazel found a large field of unusual debris near Roswell, New Mexico. This was not described as a small pile of ordinary wreckage. It was spread across a wide area, suggesting that something significant had come apart in the desert. At first, this was a local discovery, but very quickly it became a military matter. Witnesses later described material that did not sound like weather balloon debris. Some pieces were said to be extremely light, but strangely strong. Some could not be cut or burned. Other pieces were described like thin metallic foil that could be crumpled and then returned to its original shape. There were also descriptions of beam-like fragments with strange markings. That does not prove alien origin, but it does create a serious problem for the official story. The military response was immediate. The 509th Bomb Group became involved. This was not an ordinary unit. It was the elite group connected to America's atomic bomb capability after World War II. So if this was only balloon debris, why was it treated like a high-security event? Why did intelligence officers become involved? Why was the area controlled? The answer may be simple. The military did not initially treat this as ordinary. According to later accounts, debris was moved quickly through military channels, and high-ranking officials became involved. That kind of response does not fit comfortably with the idea of a harmless weather balloon. It fits better with something the authorities did not understand, or did not want the public to understand. Some accounts claim that material was transported from New Mexico to Fort Worth, and possibly onward to Wright Field. That matters because Wright Field was connected to technical analysis and advanced military investigation. Again, this does not prove what the object was, but it does suggest that the debris was considered important. And if it was important, the public explanation should have been clear. Instead, it changed almost immediately. The first official press release said the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group had recovered a flying disc. Not a weather balloon, not a target reflector, not Project Mogul, a flying disc. That statement came from the military itself, and that is why it still matters, because the first official version sounds much closer to what the witnesses later described. Then General Ramey stepped in. The story was reversed. Suddenly, the flying disc became a weather balloon. The public was shown ordinary-looking debris, and the case was supposed to be closed. But that reversal does not feel like clarification. It feels like control. Because if the first press release was simply wrong, why did so many later witnesses describe something far more unusual? Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer involved in the recovery, later said the debris shown to the press was not the same material he had collected. That is one of the strongest points in the case, because the famous photo was used to settle the story. But if Marcel was right, then the public was not shown the real evidence. The public was shown a substitute, and once that possibility enters the case, the official explanation becomes much harder to trust. Sheriff George Wilcox was also involved early. According to later family accounts, Wilcox did not believe the material was a weather balloon. Some accounts connected to his family even claimed that he knew of a craft and bodies. These claims were not made publicly by Wilcox during his lifetime, but the reason given by his family was simple. He had been warned not to speak. Over the decades, many witnesses described a similar pattern: strange debris, military secrecy, restricted access, warnings, threats, and in some of the most controversial accounts, bodies. Some witnesses spoke of small, non-human bodies being recovered. Others described bodies being taken to Roswell Army Airfield or moved elsewhere for analysis. Not every claim can be proven, but they cannot all be dismissed as fantasy either. The intimidation claims are especially serious. Brazel was reportedly held at the base and later changed the tone of his story. Other civilians and families claimed they were warned to stay silent. Some accounts even describe direct threats from military personnel. If true, this was not a simple misunderstanding. It was information control. And that is exactly why Roswell still refuses to go away. Even the media side of the story raises questions. Some accounts describe radio broadcasts being stopped, reporters being told not to discuss what they had learned, and pressure coming from government channels. Again, this does not prove what crashed, but it does show that the authorities were not acting like they had nothing to hide. They were acting like the story had to be contained. Decades later, the explanation changed again. Now it was Project Mogul, a classified balloon program. That may explain why Secrecy existed, but it does not explain the flying disc press release. It does not explain strange metal testimony. It does not explain witnesses who rejected the balloon story. And it does not explain why reports of bodies were later connected to test dummies dropped years after 1947. That is not a complete explanation. That is a patch placed over an older denial. Then there are the missing records. Important. Roswell military documents were later found to be destroyed or unavailable. That does not prove a cover-up by itself, but it destroys confidence. Because when the government says, "Trust us," while the story keeps changing, witnesses are ignored and records disappear, trust becomes almost impossible. Roswell may never prove exactly what came down in 1947, but the official story does not prove its case either. The strongest reading is this: something unusual crashed near Roswell. The military first told the public it had recovered a flying disc. Then higher authority changed the story. Witnesses were pressured. Evidence disappeared from public view. And decades later, new explanations were built around a case that had never been honestly opened. So maybe the real mystery is not only what crashed in the desert. Maybe the real mystery is why the truth needed so many official versions.